All right, folks, we're going to take a second to sit and talk about Liquid Death, which is hilariously a very successful company right now, and a company you can look at and say, this is a company that succeeded by doing everything wrong. And we're going to go into a little bit more than that too. And I'm going to have some links in the description to cover that a little bit more. But long story short, this is a shelf of bottled water. This is bottled water. That's what it is. Mostly plastic bottles that more or less all look the same. So imagine you come to an investor or you come to a design lead and you pitch, I'm going to sell this, but it's going to look like that. And now, just to go ahead and say it, this is not sponsored in any way by Liquid Death, but Liquid Death is just such an interesting story that I wanted to make sure to go ahead and highlight it. Um, but yeah, so like picture that. It's called Liquid Death. It is healthy water in a can, but it's called Liquid Death. And it's actually in the CBS interview the founder did at one point. He talks about how he approaches marketing thinking of what's the dumbest decision we could possibly make because that's the level of pushing yourself you have to get to be truly innovative and interesting, which I thought was cool. It's definitely something that worked for them and is a lesson that can be learned up to a point. But Liquid Death is a company selling water in metal cans under the name Liquid Death. Very healthy. And the story is actually surprisingly wholesome. So the original founder was very connected with music scenes and spent some time backstage with a lot of big name bands and found at some of these big concerts, these big bands, there was Monster Energy themed stuff everywhere. And the Monster Energy drink was kind of the biggest sponsor of all of these events. But all of the stars and people backstage and on stage who were drinking this stuff out of these monster cans had refilled them with water because they didn't want to drink Monster Energy drinks all the time. And we can do a whole tangent about how dangerous your standard Monster Energy drink actually is. Um, I have a cousin who actually gave himself a heart attack at 25 because he was trying to get through a long drive home in the middle of winter and was just chugging monsters to stay awake by himself on the road. Not great, but but really the kind of key message here is that he went to this spot and he found in this market that there was a very key need, like a really important thing that people wanted. There was a market space, there was a clear audience, there was obviously a place for a product that looked and sounded like your Dos Equis or your one of your liquor store or liquor brand ads. One of those things that had the really fun, creative advertising that was very exciting, but was healthy. And if you look at every single water brand out there, they all emphasize purity and the cleanliness and simple design, and more often than not, by looking exactly the same as every other competitor. You have like a very basic clear bottle, usually clear plastic, usually even the sparkling waters, a lot of them fall back in this very standard, very cheap, very basic design strategy. And Liquid Death came to the market doing something completely different, starting in a place where they could be an immediate niche. Not only was it these band venues and these rock star folks who would actually kind of enjoy the branding, but then there's also this moment right now where adults are drinking less and less alcohol, and also just it's just a really interesting market space. Excuse me, there was a quick pause there. But another example that I've heard in some of the other videos is that bars have bottled water all the time and they barely sell any of it at all. People don't buy it. Even if people want to drink water, they're not going to buy bottled water. But they will buy a can that looks like Liquid Death and has their favorite flavor and is just that cool and that heavily branded and blends in with other canned drinks, like a beer can, like a Monster Energy drink. You can sit and blend into a social scene without drinking alcohol, drinking something healthy, without drinking a monster at bedtime. And this branding really plays into that. Now, a couple other things that I've also come up with on this is that from a very human element, this is one of those things where it's such an extreme, intense brand, you never forget it. One of the funnier things I thought of when I was making this or doing the script for this video is that I've never seen a Liquid Death ad, not once, not a single video spot, not a single virtual ad, not a single streaming ad, nothing anywhere ever. I saw these cans once, was like, what is that? Picked it up off a shelf, read it, and was like, wow, it's water. Put it back, and I've never forgotten that moment, and the brand has been on my mind ever since. Because that level of shock value, it's so different, it's so extreme that it's been cemented in my brain for that long. And I never even tried this stuff for ages until finally at some point we had a potluck with some friends. One of my friends brought a couple of these over to it and forgot one at the party. And as I was cleaning up, I was like, oh, what's this? And so I tried it and it was really freaking good. It was one of the sparkling flavored varieties and it was delicious. So you think about this strategy as a customer, as a way a company approaches the market, right? There's that experience. So If they see their product, do they read the name? Do they even pause to look at it? And yes, in this case, absolutely they do. And then do they remember it? Do they remember the name, remember what it was, or where to find it? Obviously, yes, very clearly. And then do they try it? Another big win. And then if they do try it, do they like it? So it's, are you visible? Are you memorable? Are you findable? And then is your product good enough for people to come back to it? And I may not be a forever customer of Liquid Death. I may not drink it all the time, but I remember it fondly and it's pretty darn cool. And that again is as someone who has never seen an actual ad spot for the company or the product. And that's one of the crazy things about it too, is the person that left this at this potluck is the kind of person who could take this kind of extreme intense brand and kind of live that shock value. And he's the kind of person who would embrace this brand as a part of his personal brand because it's so intense, because it's so striking, because it fits into this whole other like tattooed rock band aesthetic in such a perfect way. And it's this crazy thing where like any company out, any investor out there, any marketer out there, any kind of corporate advisor out there would tell you not to do this. And it's really brilliant how this has succeeded with such an intense extreme, something that no one would have bet on in most moments in most normal times. And that's why it's a really extraordinary story to talk about. And one of the things that keeps coming up for me about this is I remember a very different time. I lived through the 90s, chunk of the 80s, and saw a lot of other products do kind of similar things and fail spectacularly in a variety of different ways. But one sticks to mind a lot whenever I'm thinking about Liquid Death, and that is Sobe. Sobe. If you don't remember it, no shame in that. It was a like vitamin water energy drink company that stood out because they had these big, big bottles that were glass. And that really stood out immediately because they're glass, which no other company doing that was. They had the big bottles with the big caps. So they were refillable, they were stylish. You could actually keep them as a water bottle. And I frequently did cool lizard designs on the glass. And the drinks themselves were really, really good. They tasted delicious. And that was a big part of my high school experience, not to date myself, that I drank Sobe, and I loved it. It was a big thing, and I used Sobe bottles, and they were around all the time. And I loved the branding, I loved the marketing, the ad campaign. I still remember what it was. Sobe, so be yourself. Apologies in the accent on that one. But it was a really fun company, a cool brand, and a great product. And then at some point later on in life, somebody bought them. I think it was near the end of my time in high school. And the first thing that company did was make the bottle smaller, make the bottles plastic, and then make the formula worse. So they tasted like every other nasty vitamin water product on the market. So it lost every single aspect that I liked about it, and the company promptly went bankrupt. And that's kind of the cautionary tale to think of here with Liquid Death is this is a brilliant market approach, and we need to look at this as a brilliant, really interesting market approach, and on some level protect that and respect kind of the brilliance behind it and understand what it is about it that makes it a good product, makes it a good market approach, so that we don't end up with another investor buying it at some point and choosing to put it in plastic, make it smaller, and sell it like any other water brand, and then completely kill what makes it special. Ah, and there we are. And so it's kind of the very short breakdown of Liquid Death, how cool it is, how interesting it is, the kind of spotlight on what makes it very successful, and then kind of a cautionary tale about where else this could have gone and kind of the other ways about this. And it's the whole story is about a company that succeeded outlandishly. I think they're $100 million or multi-billion dollar company. I don't remember, but they're a very successful company by doing everything wrong except the things that really matter. Great branding, great product, very good market fit, expanding to all kinds of other areas as well. Let me see here, actually. Yeah, so there's the mountain, there's the still and the sparkling. That's the original, like just the mountain water. Then we've got an energy drink they made, but specifically marketing the health impacts of it. So it's a healthier energy drink. Then they've got the sparkling water that says less sugar, but I don't see if it's fake sugar. And that is a really important thing too, because most brands out there that do less sugar, they just put in more artificial sweetener and don't actually change the sweetness level, which is just mind-boggling. And then you've got your flavored tea, which is kind of great. Of course, the names Rest in Peach always gets my eye. I really like that one. It's just it's a really interesting company. And again, even these stills, even these really basic things, they're small pieces that really highlight the priorities of the company, the things that the company considers important, and the ways that the product sticks the landing. They have gold cans that cannot be the least expensive version of the can. They have very intense artwork on them that can't be the cheapest way to do that. They are big and they are cans. They're metal, so the shipping is more expensive. And I actually learned a little bit about the backstory there that Shipping cans, the cans themselves are heavier than plastic, so the shipping costs add up very quickly, especially as you scale up. And so Liquid Death was producing these internationally. And then at some point, they decided the cost was prohibitive for shipping the volumes they were doing. And that's where most companies would still switch to doing the same thing, but in plastic, smaller bottles make it cheaper. What Liquid Death did is they actually researched and moved their production to the US, where the bulk of their market is, and found actual natural spring water. So they didn't just switch to filtered water, filtered tap water, filtered city water like most competitors have done. They found natural springs that were untapped in the US and used those as their main source of water. So cheaper shipping because they're close to the market. They still are able to maintain their still like mountain fresh water because it's fresh. Um, and they're able to just continue doing what they were doing, maintaining the things that they considered really important and that a lot of their customers consider important by doing some extra legwork. They didn't take the easy way out. They didn't take the easy solution. They didn't take the obvious cost saving solution. They were like, how do we do this without giving up what makes us who we are, which is super cool. And I really liked that. And then also this part here, this whole thing about why they are doing metal, and this right here is similar. This is also still like triggering warning bells for me because Sobe had similar reasons for why they used glass, but they ended up switching to plastic at some point. They changed that. So that could always happen too. But this is a really good message of why they use cans. And that not only gives you a positive, if you're a conscientious consumer, that not only gives you a positive impression of the business because they choose to do this, say this, and this is why they do it, but also every time you hold a can and feel the shape and feel the metal, you kind of appreciate why they chose to do that and stick it that way when, since they're not like an alcoholic fizzy drink, they don't have to. They have chosen to use metal, even though it's slightly more expensive, and chosen to find other ways to make sure they can keep their costs low to make it affordable while still sticking to that same goal and that same message. And this, more than the dramatic branding or any of this, some of that is actually, this is fun. The flasket. Oh my God, the puns. And that's the thing. It's just so wholesome that the skulls and reapers and crazy branding and such is just such a wholesome, well thought out, very creative and successful business. Because again, they've ignored the kind of standard advice and made all of the wrong decisions on the large scale, but then made all of the right decisions in the ways that matter the most to their customers, to the founder, and to the brand. That's just, it's a great story. I've had this video in my head for a long time. This probably will be the last time I do a video on it, but it will not be the last time I mention Liquid Death or talk up the company and brand. I don't remember if I said this, but this is in no way sponsored by Liquid Death, but hopefully they see it because, yeah, kudos, guys. So this is cool. Cheers. Till next time.